Jeffrey Lichtman, AM970 The Answer, filling in for Curtis until 10 o'clock today and for the rest of the week. On the line right now, I read this article yesterday and I just loved it. Nida Khan, she's a contributor to the Huffington Post and an independent journalist and producer working in print, radio, and TV. Nida, how are you today?
Hi, good morning. Good to be with you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, Rachel Nordlinger, your friend, she told me to be very nice to you, and I love her like a sister.
We would have some friends in common.
I know. I love Rachel. I mean, this is
Rachel's great.
The best, right? No question.
Sweetheart, okay. Rachel's a great person.
She's the best. She's got to come on this show. In fact, Rachel, I know you're listening. Call up after the show and make a time this week to get you on. I want to have you on for sure. Now, Nida, you wrote this article in the Daily News entitled "White Men Can Also Be Extremists." Give us a little background. Tell us your main points on this.
Well, basically, the title itself is somewhat facetious, but somewhat not. If we look at all the recent attacks that we've had of violence, and the phrase domestic terrorism itself has been done by white guys. You had the Colorado shooting, the Wisconsin shooting, you had Jared Loughner, the failed attempt at the Martin Luther King parade last year. So all these victims attacks have been done by white men, but we never see them categorized or explained in the media as by the religion or the ethnicity or the race, whereas when it's a Muslim person, they're almost always defined by their religion, and there lies the problem. And then you have folks like Peter King who are holding hearings on an entire community and putting them under suspicion, and nothing is being done against these folks who are doing these attacks. And
well,
we're wasting all this money. Okay.
Fair point. Go ahead. No, keep going.
I'm saying we're wasting all this money, all this taxpayer dollars on NYPD surveillance programs, which, as the AP report revealed, have yielded absolutely no leads or arrests or anything at all. So the fact that we're spending all this time on this marginalized community is just ridiculous.
Okay, so let me give you a couple points. The reason why all these crazy white guys that were doing all these shootings, the reason why no one mentioned their religion is as they're doing the shooting, they're not screaming Allah Akbar. They're not when they're running.
Okay,
hang on a second. Let me make my points now. Let me make my points now.
Go ahead.
When they're cutting the throats of passengers on a plane and ramming the planes into the World Trade Center, they're not screaming God is great, Allah is great. Now that's the first thing. Hang on a second. Let me finish. Secondly, when let's say the Branch Davidians and David Koresh, when he had all that violence, when they were burning the place down, all those people were killed. Branch Davidian, the religion was brought out. Why? Because the killing was done in the name of religion. When Jared Lee Loughner did his shooting, when that maniac in the theater in Aurora, Colorado, when all of these maniacs, the guy the other day, Jeffrey Johnson, outside the Empire State Building, none of their killings were part of a global jihad or a global anything or even a national anything. They were just people that snapped and did the shootings. When you've got time after time again of people killing in the name of Allah, and there's been contact between various jihadists in the global network helping them do these things, it's not surprising. I'll give you another example. Last thing, and I'll let you talk. Just the other night in Chicago, there were like 19 people shot and killed. I have no doubt that many of them, some of them, were Muslim. Nobody cared about their religion. Nobody asked. Why? Because it was not done on behalf of Allah. I've got a client, a very big client of mine who was recently charged with murder. Rachel knows who he is. I love the guy like a brother. He's a Muslim. His religion has never been brought out in the newspaper. Why? Because the allegations of murder did not center around his religion.
Okay, well, first of all, Allahu Akbar just means God is great, as I believe you just said it.
Well, do you think that when they're saying God is great that they just are saying it because they love God or because they're doing it on behalf of Allah?
Let me speak. And that could be used in the context of if I got an A on a paper, I could say that. So that I could be like, oh, Allahu Akbar, I got an A+ on some exam.
Just don't do that with a box cutter in your hand on a plane.
Well, wait, you're not letting me make my point. That's neither here nor there, saying Allahu Akbar. Secondly, there is a global, international anti-Muslim and conservative right-wing movement. Actually, there's an organization called the Hope Not Hate Group, which is completely nonpartisan, not left-right, completely down the middle. And they actually put out a very, very troubling report saying that there's at least 144 of these groups around the world. And if you look at, what's his name, Breivik in Norway, who was one of these right-wingers who is anti-Muslim.
He had no contact with any other group but himself.
No. He actually said that a lot of his stuff was taken from groups here in the U.S.
Stuff that he read, but he didn't have contact with this. Let's talk about the Army Major Nidal Hassan. Hang on a second. In Fort Hood, as he was shooting up all those people in Fort Hood, there were emails between him and al-Awlaki, who was giving him financial advice.
Nidal Hassan was automatically in the media. And this is like on a so-called liberal media network. It was MSNBC. As soon as the report came out, before they even knew who this guy was, they said, wow, it sounds like he has an Arabic-sounding name. Why do we automatically jump to
We shouldn't. We shouldn't, but you know something? Hang on a second.
I'm sorry, this is a Muslim extremist.
Nida, hang on a second. Slow down. Let me make some points. Let me make some points.
I let you make your point as well. And the Southern, as I put in my piece too, the Southern Poverty Law Center also warned of these anti-government conservative right-wing groups that are the biggest threat right now, especially when we have someone like President Obama in office.
Yes, but there's so many murder plots against President Obama. There's been so much violence in the streets because of these white groups.
And how do we know that this guy, Joseph Sachs, who flew a plane into the IRS building, who said that he was, and I quote, upset with the government, that he was not some Christian fundamentalist?
I'll tell you why.
Nobody looked into him.
I'm going to tell you why. Because they looked into him after it was over. Hang on. Can I make my points now? They looked into him after it was over, and there were no emails between him and, let's say, an al-Awlaki who was giving him advice on how to handle his jihad. Hang on a second. Let me talk about Peter King for a second. You say that it's a big joke that he had these hearings about the radicalization of Americans into Islam. Well, guess what? It's happening in prisons. And what about the 20 people in Minnesota, the 20 young people who went to Somalia and blew themselves up for jihad?
Take time to look at these conservative white guys who are going
because they're not killing in the name of their God. Don't you see the difference? Oh Lord, they're not. Tell me, what did Jared Lee Loughner say when he shot the Congresswoman?
I'm sorry, I'm losing you for a second. Can you hear me?
Did any of these white people scream about God as they did their shootings?
Were you there? Was I there? No.
None of the witnesses said it. It's not important. Of course it's not, because it hurts your position.
The point is that you're looking into an entire community saying they're radical, right?
I'm not looking into it. You're trying to paint me as an Islamophobe when I'm saying that I'm only talking about radical Islamists. You're the one that's the Islamophobe, because you're saying that anytime there's criticism of radical Islam, that it's a criticism of all Islam.
No. All right, if we look at Peter King's hearing, if he's looking at an entire community of Muslim Americans, right? And
no, he's not. He's looking into only the radical pockets of it.
It's called radicalization.
He's trying to figure out why regular Muslim kids or regular Americans are becoming radicalized.
Why isn't he spending time figuring out why regular white guys are becoming
Because there haven't been 3,000 people killed by someone screaming God is great by a radical Islamist.
Okay. The folks who blew up the World Trade Center are not Muslim by any means.
They're not Muslim? I think that they would say otherwise. I think that Osama bin Laden and many of the followers in the Middle East would say otherwise, that they're Muslims. Maybe they're bad Muslims.
Just like every Christian would denounce Timothy McVeigh, every Muslim denounces what those guys did on 9/11.
Not every Muslim doesn't. That's not true. Every Muslim who, in your house?
I'm saying every Muslim that actually follows the religion does not.
They follow the religion. They just follow it differently than you. Admit it.
They do not. No, they do not. Those are not Muslim acts. Are you saying then that
they're not Muslim acts? They follow the religion different. Just because they're bad Muslims doesn't mean they're not Muslims.
Are you saying that Timothy McVeigh was a great Christian?
He was a horrible Christian. Just like I said, the other guy was a bad Muslim. Doesn't mean that he wasn't a Christian.
Well, do you believe that he followed the tenets of Christianity by killing 19 children and hundreds of others?
Do you understand that when Timothy McVeigh did his deed, that he didn't at all blame it on his God, unlike radical... Here, let me just go into something else you said that I found incredible, is you talked about how the hate crimes are so bad against the Muslims. Are you aware that there is less than 20% of hate crimes that are committed against Jews are against Muslims?
I'm sorry, say that again?
You understand that in 2010, there were 887 hate crimes against Jews, only 160 against Muslims.
Okay, and your point being?
My point is that you make it sound as if this is the most incredible thing in the world, that there's hate crimes against Muslims. It's less than 2% in America.
My point was...
And you're complaining about them being terrorized by a package of bacon.
My point was that they're on a rise, that they're just as high as immediately after 9/11, but we never hear about them. And instead, we're surveilling and focusing on this community as if they're the ones...
We're not focusing on the community. We're trying to protect ourselves from being killed. And I have a question. Why did you cite CARE? In your article, you lost me when you... Hang on a second, Nida. Slow down. Hang on a second. I'll give you a chance to finish. You'll get the last word. I'm going to give you the last word. I'm going to give you the last word, I promise. I'm going to give you the last word if you stop yapping. You talked about CARE. You cited CARE. Stop yapping. The director of CARE in Southern California described Israeli Jews as Zion Nazis. Is that something that you support?
Obviously not.
Okay. CARE Chicago's executive director, his college webpage claimed that the Holocaust never occurred. Is that the CARE that you're supporting? Is that the best you can do?
You're doing the same thing.
I'm doing the same thing, right. CARE has invited neo-Nazis to speak. CARE has repeatedly defended Muslim Brotherhood leaders.
God, I can't even get in a word.
CARE officials have expressed their ultimate desire for an Islamic government in the United States.
Let me ask you a question. What was the point of the NYPD?
Don't ask me questions. Tell me your point. Go ahead, your last point.
You have kids who are going whitewater rafting and they're being spied upon?
I don't think, listen, I have often said that I think that racial profiling is bad. But as Willie Sutton said, why do you rob banks, Willie? Because that's where the money is.
Well, then, are you trying to say that
I'm saying that, you know something, if I was a good Muslim, and I have no problem with this religion, I have no problem with regular rank-and-file Muslims, I support them, I represent them, and I love them like brothers, and God knows I've gone to the ends of earth for some Muslims. I also feel that if I was a good Muslim and there were bad Muslims afoot blowing things up in the name of my God, instead of trying to stop people from investigating, I would be out there saying, get these bad people, they're besmirching my religion.
You know, let me tell you something. There in mosques all around the country, there are imams, which are the religious leaders, and people within that community that have outed tons and tons of people for inciting.
No doubt. Then why is it that CARE says not to talk to the FBI?
And guess what? Majority of the time, they ended up being covert FBI agents.
Well, you know, FBI is infiltrated.
And you know, and they're out there. They're the ones rooting out the terrorism that may exist wherever it may exist, and they're actually bringing this to the forefront. But nobody ever reports about that. We never see a balance in the media.
I think that we celebrate the good Muslims who
try to. That was my point, Jeffrey, was that there's no balance in the media. And when you use words like terrorist constantly, juxtaposed with a Muslim person.
The reason why there's no balance in the media is because there's so many Muslim terror attacks. They should stop having terror attacks and they wouldn't have to read about it.
There's so many Muslim terrorists now? That's what you're saying? And there's not domestic terrorism?
But they're not linked to a global jihad. They're just random violence.
They obviously are, because if we go by even Peter King's notion, that has to be something international. Norway, Breivik, all those groups, 144.
And there's somebody behind the grassy knoll as well. Nida, we've got to run to traffic. But thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your bravery. Jeffrey Lichtman, AM970, The Answer. We're going to go to traffic.